Former President Donald Trump rallied supporters in Pennsylvania yesterday, a state crucial to win the presidential election. Both Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris have been working to win over the Keystone State. Trump spoke to his supporters last night. He told them it's now or never for him.
Somebody I heard the other day, pretty smart person, and you think about it, and it could be true. They said, if we don't win this election, there may never be another election in this country. It could happen. Look at Venezuela. Venezuela was the most prosperous country, and now you take a look. And can you believe these stupid people are buying oil from Venezuela?
Trump also, of course, threw some jabs at Harris.
6 weeks away from the most important election in the history of our country, and here are the facts. Kamala Harris wants open borders. She will deliver rampant inflation, and she wants to pack the Supreme Court. You know that. Instead of 9 justices like we have now, Kamala wants to bring it up very substantially. Now, this is a number I heard 2 days ago, potentially to 25 justices, so she can rig the system, meaning not she, the whole party can rig the system, the party of communists.
He also said the war between Russia and Ukraine is, quote, our fault.
They keep bombing, cities pouring down, bombing. It's horrible, horrible. Actually, they're reduced now to using young boys and old men. Young boys and old men, because their people have been killed, so many of their people have been killed that they are using young boys to fight the war and old men. How about that? It's what a horrible thing has happened just because, and it's our fault because it's a war that should have never been allowed to happen, and we had the power that it would never have happened. We have an incompetent leader in Biden.
I mean, I think there's some truth to what he says there. I mentioned it earlier. It is a fact that Ukraine is a much smaller country than Russia. It has more limited, even, we're giving them lots of military aid and weaponry, but we are not sending soldiers, so it's solely on the people of Ukraine to actually use the weapons effectively, defend themselves. They've lost a lot of people, and it is the case that outside normal military age is now who they're relying on. People who've been, who've been in this war or been proximate to war zones now for years, the kind of the health problems and the stress and the sleeplessness and the jitteriness from having things blowing up all around you for years renders you a much less effective fighting force. I've spoken to, we've interviewed on the show, military experts who wonder how effectively they can put up a resistance at some point, even with all the weaponry support in the world, because it has to be them using it. And then I start to worry, based on the experience we've had in Afghanistan and other places, well, what if we're arming them and they're not using the arms effectively or efficiently because they're just beyond their capabilities and they're being overrun, then is weaponry falling into the hands of Russian soldiers? This has been our experience. And the ISIS ended up with a bunch of gear left over from previous conflicts, our gear. That's not good at all.
No, it's not good. With that being said, Russia has had quite a bit of defection. There are people who are just quitting on the front line saying, we don't want to do this. We know that there was the internal coup, military debates internally in Russia, and that led to...
Well, they killed everybody who participated in the coup.
Exactly.
There was a coup, it failed, and then their plane blew up with all of them on it, right?
But part of the reason that happened was because so many of the frontline forces didn't want to do it anymore. They felt it was directionless, and that Putin was taking out his aggression for his own power rather than for the Russian people. And so it's happening on both sides in different ways. Yes, the war and the conflict need to end, but Donald Trump doesn't have solutions. He just wants to hand Ukraine over to Russia. He cannot explicitly say he is against Russia. That's alarming for somebody who wants to be the president of the United States, to not call out any of our foreign adversaries who are literally taking out creating operations to challenge democracies around the world. It's alarming. Putin is a war criminal, and Donald Trump will not speak out against him. He's playing these games, and he's playing to his base because nobody wants to have war. No American wants to spend their money on conflicts overseas, and not every American really understands the consequences of not supporting Ukraine right now. Is it the right path? That is the question we need to figure out, is how do you de-escalate? How do you negotiate, set up negotiations between the two of them? But that's not what Donald Trump is saying. Donald Trump is saying it's all going to be fixed if I'm elected president. Well, that's not true.
I mean, look, I would like Donald Trump to be more specific, obviously, in some of his foreign policy ideas. He's been very critical of the current administration, the Biden administration. I think deservedly so, because the Biden administration has presided over disaster after disaster. But I would like to hear more about what his plans are to make it better. I don't think I need him to be, militaristic toward Vladimir Putin or slamming Vladimir Putin all the time. I don't think that helps get us up to a place of greater global stability. Don't we want our leaders to get along well enough to think through problems and solve them? Putin, by the way, has said he finds Donald Trump erratic and prefers Joe Biden.
That was a fun little.
Is that that's double?
I don't think anybody really believed that.
I think it's reverse psychology?
I think it's very basic reverse psychology, of course. Okay. And it doesn't work, right? It's too smart by half. If Donald Trump was there as the person who is respectful to world leaders, then maybe this would be a different conversation. But that's not like his reputation. This is the guy who wants to dismantle and defund NATO. That's not necessarily respecting your allies.
Well, I think the argument for doing that is that this was a Cold War era alliance that doesn't make a lot of sense, or didn't make a lot of sense in the inter period. Maybe it makes sense now because Russia has Russia initiated this invasion of Ukraine, but that Europe problems are Europe problems, and Europe should be primarily responsible for paying for its own defense. The U.S. can't be in charge of paying for the defense of every other nation on earth. Why, if this is so important, thwarting what Russia is trying to do in Europe, why can't it be mostly the responsibility of France and Germany and the UK? Why does it fall to the US to do it? And we have to be the world police. This is not a role for the US that the American people want. They signal time and time again that they are utterly and wholly opposed to it, and they have tried to elect time and time again the presidential candidate who is most against doing that. This is a platform that Barack Obama ran on. It's a platform that Donald Trump ran on to some degree. They want, and Joe Biden was in some ways restrained, completed the pullout from Afghanistan, what had been kind of a voice, I think, of restraint in the Obama administration, especially relative to Hillary Clinton.
With Iraq, especially.
The American people express their preference for a humble foreign policy, not total detachment or isolation, but the idea that we're not making the world safer, and we're not making us safer to be doing what we're doing. That's what the preference they express, and it's thwarted by both parties and the military-industrial complex over and over again.
Well, we know that behind closed doors, it's not just about keeping world stability, global stability. There's a lot of money making in war,
yes,
and those folks are lobbying Congress, and they're lobbying the administration, maybe not officially lobbying through monetary, but other ways, backdoor channels, to make sure that certain weapons are used. Okay, well, if we're going to pull out, then make sure those military contractors that you guys work with are sent to Afghanistan or to Iraq, as we've seen throughout history. I mean, there's an entire sub-industry, privatized industry that has been pulled out of our military-industrial complex that keeps these wars going. And, I think we need smarter foreign policy, maybe not humbler. I think it is important that we stand for democracy in times like this when, we hopefully are operating with a little bit more ethics under this administration than, say, Xi is or Putin is, where they just go in and invade.
We are better than Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping.
We're better than George
totally
W.
agree.
Bush.
You're not arguing with someone who.
Bush. That's the reality. There is a difference in
any...
this administration's foreign policy than previous administrations, Republican administrations. There's a clear difference.
I can't think of three people I have less interest in defending than Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and George W. Bush. None of these are figures that speak to
but they're
my
the norm.
Set of ideals.
That's the problem, is that American norm has been to invade the global South in exploitation of farm workers. And I mean, there's so many things that we've done over the last 100 years, 150 years in particular.
Those things were bad.
In terms of our foreign policy and using our military to exploit people for oil, for farmland, for crops, whatever. I mean, for mining, whether you're in Africa or Guatemala, or we're not going to go into Venezuela, I really hope not, but we don't have a great track record, but neither do they. That's why I'm saying this administration is not dealing on those terms, and neither did the Obama administration. Joe Biden has pulled out. Has he done it in the most strategic way? His strategy, he thinks it was the right strategy to pull out of Afghanistan. What would the alternative have been? I don't know. It wouldn't have been good either, probably. But Donald Trump doesn't have a strategy at all.
Well, I mean, it was Donald Trump's plan to pull out in the first place.
But how would he
kicked
have
it
done
off.
so?
Right. Well, he doesn't give enough specific details, and I think that's fair. I'd like to hear more from him. I think it is fine to support, as I do, the pull out from Afghanistan. We should not have been involved there so long. We were not making the situation better. And also to wonder whether the pullout could have gone more successfully without the deaths of American the humiliating, embarrassing loss of life that occurred being a bad thing, even if ultimately the strategy was correct.
And the NGOs that had to leave.
Yeah, more Rising right after this. Actually, that does it for us today on Rising. We do not have more Rising. That was a lie. We will have more Rising tomorrow. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, now available anywhere you can listen to podcasts. See you later.